Let's talk about the number system. So I've mentioned this a couple of times. You might have heard it in passing a few times as I've been speaking, calling chords by numbers instead of calling them by their name. So let me just explain the basics of this. There are 7 notes in the scale, in any major scale at all. So even if I play F sharp major, there are 7 notes in that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then it repeats. C major, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it repeats. So there's 7 different notes, and then the 8th note is the octave. So what we can do is actually call the chords that are built on those notes by the number that they are in the scale, by the scale degree. So as an example, C major is the chord that is created off the first note in the scale, right? We take the first note, we know it's major, ma, that's a mommy, mi, ma, ma, mi, dim. That was +4, +3, and we call this the 1 chord. It's on the first note of the scale. It's the chord built on the 1, it's the 1 chord. And we go to the D and build a chord, we get D minor. This is the 2 chord, the 3 chord, the 4 chord, 5 chord, 6 chord, 7 chord. That's all there is to it. We number the chords as opposed to just calling it D minor. We want to know it's called D minor, but it's also great to be able to call it just the 2 chord. And now you remember from before, from the chord section, this order of chords, major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, this is universal for all major scales. That means you can memorize that the 1 chord is major, the 2 chord is minor, the 3 chord is minor, the 4 chord is major, the 5 chord is major, the 6 chord is minor, and the 7 chord is the diminished one. If you can memorize this, it's the same in every single major scale. If I use G major and I play the 1 chord, it's major, the 2 chord, it's minor, the 3 chord, it's, it's minor, the 4 chord, it's major, and so on. So, for instance, the 1 chord is always major, the 4 chord is always major, the 5 chord is always major. Those are the 3 major chords in any major scale, the 1, the 4, and the 5. The 2, the 3, and the 6 are minor, and the 7 is diminished. So this is good to memorize, or at least understand, because if I take a chord progression, say I have a progression like I wrote in the song earlier, I had F, E minor, D, A minor. And instead of calling this F major, E minor, D minor, A minor, I would call this 4, 3, 2, 6. That's the numbers of the notes in the scale, the 4th note, the 3rd, the 2nd, and the 6th. And that's called a 4, 3, 2, 6 progression. Now, what's great about this is that because the numbers are always attached to their chord quality, 4 is always major, 2 is always minor, I don't have to say major and minor. I just say 4, 3, 2, 6, and any other musician who's learned this, who are many, most musicians know about this, they will be able to understand what I mean. I would say I'm playing in the key of C, and I'm playing a 4, 3, 2, 6. They will understand what that means. That means F major, E minor, D minor, and A minor, because they know 4 is a major chord, and F is the 4th note of C. So they'll be able to decode that and know that's F major. So some of the other benefits of this system is that, I mean, first of all, of course, you don't need to be, you don't need to say the full names all the time. You can just say the number. The second is that this allows you to take chord progressions and put them into new keys. So for instance, if I had a 1, 2, 3 progression, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. If I say, okay, I want to play a 1, 2, 3 in the key of G major, now I go to G, this is my 1 now, and I play 1, 2, 3. Notice how it sounds similar to the key of C. Here's the key of C again. Here's the key of F. A 1, 2, 3 progression is always going to sound the same, relatively speaking. It's just going to be higher or lower in different keys. That's because the numbers are attached to the chord qualities. The 1 is always major, the 2 is always minor, the 3 is always minor. So if you learn that you like a certain chord progression, it's better to know it in numbers than it is to know it in its names in terms of F major and blah, blah. It's better to know it as a 1, 2, 3 than a C major, D minor, E minor, because if you know it as a 1, 2, 3, you can put that chord progression into any key. And we're going to be doing that as we start to learn to play other scales. And if you can do that, you can do a whole lot of things with chords just by understanding the numbers. So this number system, we're just going over the basics of it right now, but it's very important to understand because in the future I'll probably be talking almost exclusively in numbers because it's much quicker to talk about. Like I might say my verse has a 1-4 progression, which in this case would be C major to F major, 1 and 4. But my chorus has a 3-4, 3-6 progression, and my bridge has a 5-5, 4-5 progression or something like that. I can quickly talk about chord progressions just by stating their numbers. And I know that those numbers are attached to those chord qualities, so 5 is always major, 4 is always major, and so on like that. So this is like a shorthand way of talking about chord progressions and is really the most common way of talking about chord progressions in the musical world in general. I want to emphasize that though this is an important thing to understand, you do also want to be able to name those chords if you need to. So if someone says, oh, I'm playing the 5 chord in the key of C, well, you can find the 5th note of C, and you know that a 5 chord is always major, so you'd build a major chord. But you want to be able to name this chord when you look at it and say, oh, that's G, G major, in case for some reason you need to know that. So the number system goes hand in hand with the chord names. The number system allows you to do certain things, and the chord names allow you to do certain things. But it's important to know that they are interrelated like that. Last thing to say is that make sure you take special notice of the 1 chord, as always. The 1 chord is the key center, the tonic, the root note, the one that feels like home. So wherever the 1 chord lands, so to speak, in your chord progression, wherever it is, that's going to feel like the most settled part of your chord progression. And it's just something to be aware of. It doesn't mean you need to change your chord progressions or think too much differently. You just want to be aware of that. So as you play the 1 chord, in this case when you play C major, you notice its rested home-like quality, that it doesn't need to go anywhere. It feels stable in itself, like you could end on that chord. I'm going to keep emphasizing this key center idea because the more you can comprehend this, the better you're going to be able to write your music. And if you start paying attention to the music that you listen to on the radio or wherever, you will start to hear when the 1 chord appears in those songs. Even though you didn't write them, certain chords are going to feel like, oh, we've just landed home, and it feels stable. Mostly, you start off by noticing it at the end of songs. So a song is playing like this. And then you hear, and it feels settled like that. It's done. That done quality, that settled quality is the key center. That's the tonic, the root note, the 1 chord, the one that feels home. So beginning to notice that, beginning to take note of it wherever you can, this is an important thing to do. So that's it for the basics of the number system. We need to now look at expanding our song using the pop song structure, writing some new chord progressions and so on, and we're going to make a full song that way.